Racism is the belief that groups of humans possess different behavioral traits corresponding to physical appearance and can be divided based on the superiority of one race over another. It may also mean prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against other people because they are of a different ethnicity. Modern variants of racism are often based in social perceptions of biological differences between peoples. These views can take the form of social actions, practices or beliefs, or political systems in which different races are ranked as inherently superior or inferior to each other, based on presumed shared inheritable traits, abilities, or qualities. In terms of political systems that support the expression of prejudice or aversion in discriminatory practices or laws, racist ideology may include associated social aspects such as nativism, xenophobia, otherness, segregation, hierarchical ranking, and supremacism, while the concepts of race and ethnicity are considered to be separate in contemporary social science. The two terms have a long history of equivalence in popular usage and older social science literature. Ethnicity is often used in a sense close to one traditionally attributed to race. The division of human groups based on qualities assumed to be essential or innate to the group. Therefore, racism and racial discrimination are often used to describe discrimination on an ethnic or cultural basis, independent of whether these differences are described as racial. According to a United Nations Convention on Racial Discrimination, there is no distinction between the terms racial and ethnic discrimination. The UN Convention further concludes that superiority based on racial differentiation is scientifically false, morally condemnable, socially unjust and dangerous. The convention also declared that there is no justification for racial discrimination anywhere, in theory or in practice. Racism is a relatively modern concept, arising in the European age of imperialism, the subsequent growth of capitalism, and especially the Atlantic slave trade, of which it was a major driving force. It was also a major force behind racial segregation, especially in the United States in the 19th and early 20th centuries, in South Africa under apartheid. 19th and 20th century racism in Western culture is particularly well documented and constitutes a reference point in studies and discourses about racism. Racism has played a role in genocides such as the Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, and the genocide of Serbs, as well as colonial projects including the European colonization of the Americas, Africa, and Asia, as well as the Soviet deportations of indigenous minorities. Indigenous peoples have been, and are, often subject to racist attitudes. In the 19th century, many scientists subscribed to the belief that the human population can be divided into races. The term racism is a noun describing the state of being racist, i.e., subscribing to the belief that the human population can or should be classified into races with differential abilities and dispositions, which in turn may motivate a political ideology in which rights and privileges are differentially distributed based on racial categories. The term racist may be an adjective or a noun, the latter describing a person who holds those beliefs. The origin of the root word, race, is not clear. Linguists generally agree that it came to the English language from Middle French. But there is no such agreement on how it generally came into Latin-based languages. A recent proposal is that it derives from the Arabic ras, which means head, beginning, origin, or the Hebrew rosh, which has a similar meaning. Early race theorists generally held the view that some races were inferior to others, and they consequently believed that the differential treatment of races was fully justified. These early theories guided pseudo-scientific research assumptions. The collective endeavors to adequately define and form hypotheses about racial differences are generally termed scientific racism, though this term is a misnomer, due to the lack of any actual science backing the claims today. Most biologists, anthropologists, and sociologists reject the taxonomy of races in favor of more specific and/or empirically verifiable criteria, such as geography, ethnicity, or a history of endogamy. To date, there is little evidence in human genome research which indicates that race can be defined in such a way as to be useful in determining a genetic classification of humans. An entry in the Oxford English Dictionary as its history indicates, The popular use of the word racism is relatively recent. The word came into widespread usage in the Western world in the 1930s, when it was used to describe the social and political ideology of Nazism, which treated race as a naturally given political unit. It is commonly agreed that racism existed before the coinage of the word. But Tahar,